So one of the things I want to do today is just going to go through with you 5 very tangible examples of working in witness for Christ, okay? Sound good? All right. Let's start with my job. I'm going to tell you what my job is. I'm a husband and I'm a father. Every day, my job is to do everything I can to help my wife get into heaven. Every day, my job is to do everything I can to help my daughter and this little boy or girl, not sure yet inside there, get to heaven. Right? And it's not conditional. It's not when my wife meets me halfway or if she does this, I do that. This was the job I signed up for. It was the job I was born for. So every single day I give it to my wife. I happen to have an amazing wife who gives 100% to me as well. And so for that, I know my daughter's being set up for even more success. But I want you to know what your job is, okay? So now let's talk about actually in the working environment. I spend a lot of my days coaching people, and coaching can be a lot of fun, right? It's motivating, it's digging deep, it's helping people to communicate better and to have breakthroughs in their work environment. But guess what also comes with that? The hard stuff. People get fired. People that we hire are not the right people for the job. Shame on me first, then my team, not that person, because I put somebody in a role where they weren't going to succeed. But at the end of the day, in the last 15 years, I've terminated a lot of people. I've terminated people this year. You know, I thought about when I was going to speak about this, and my men's group that I meet with for lunch on Tuesdays is reading Luke right now, and it talks about, you know, everybody loves people who love them, right? What about loving your enemy? Even sinners love people who love them. Well, I think the same thing about company culture, and I think the same thing about working in witness for Christ as a leader. When it comes time to have really tough conversations, that's when you need to make sure that you don't sway. Don't sit here and tell me, oh, Christ is in my life because every time I get a big sale or something goes well, I say, thanks be to God. That's easy. Everybody does that. People who don't even believe in God say that part. What about the part where you have to have the really tough conversations? So let me tell you the change that I went through. Again, in my 20s, I was driven by ego, and I had trouble suppressing it. The same thing would happen when I would get ready to have to do a termination. I'd think to myself, oh man, I'm going to feel terrible if this person cries. I'm going to feel terrible getting ready for this. I'm so nervous. I'd drive home thinking, oh, that felt terrible. How am I going to blow off some steam? How can I deal with this? And listen to the one word I used over and over was I. Somebody just lost their job, and all I could worry about was how I felt going through that process. So through some amazing coaching and some spiritual enlightenment, I started praying before I went through any event like that. I prayed the night before. I prayed the morning of. I definitely pray right before. And I pray that the Holy Spirit will come and be part of that conversation and allow me to put myself in that person's shoes, to give them dignity, to give them respect, to help them to clearly see, no filter, what needs to happen next and how they can quickly rebound. And you know, when you put somebody else's intentions first, the words that come out of my mouth might be the same in that moment, but the impact that's felt on both sides is dramatically different. So, another example of working in witness for Christ is making sure that Christ and the Holy Spirit are 100% a part of the hard stuff. Do not hide behind yourself or what corporate America tells you. The next one kind of goes in line with some of the stuff I've already talked about, and it's just not hiding your faith. And I'm not saying to go, boldly proclaim every time you walk in the office in the morning what's happening, the good news of the Bible, but I am saying there's a lot of easy ways to hide it. It's really easy when people are asking, where are you going? You want to grab lunch? And I could say, no, I already have a lunch meeting. Or I could say, no, I'm going to a men's group. Or I could actually say, I'm going to a Catholic men's Bible study. Oh, cool. Didn't know you were Catholic. Yeah, I'm going. Or I carry my Matthew Kelly Rediscovering Catholicism book on the outside of my folder, not hidden on the inside. Like, that's not how I run. I just want to be clear. Then it gets real hard, right? Somebody says, in the lunchroom, oh, blah, 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 but he's Catholic and they're talking about so-and-so or some Catholic in the news. How many times do you sit there and be quiet or laugh along with them or walk away? Sometimes I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm not even going to claim to be a scholar of any sort, but I say, I'm Catholic. I'd love to know what you're talking about. Boy, the conversation changes. People start to lighten up and they realize that they're being gossipy and they realize that they're maybe not fully informed. So I just encourage people, don't be afraid of being both in your business world and Catholic. I know doctors who ask their patients if they want to pray beforehand. The patient can say no, the doctor's still going to pray. There's nothing wrong with being Catholic and in the workplace. Somebody emailed me one day and said, what do I do if somebody, takes that against me, doesn't want to give me a job because they know I'm Catholic, they see it on my LinkedIn? I say, cool, don't work there. Like, you just got an awesome answer. There's so many amazing places to work who are not going to put you in that bad situation. Call me, I'll network with you. Don't be afraid of being Catholic. I also like this one. People will join me for breakfast a lot. Well, I go to morning mass at 6:30, so I always say, I can meet you at Corner Bakery at 7:15, or you want to go to morning mass, it's at 6:30, it's just right here. Half of them say yes, and half say, I'll just meet you at breakfast. It's fine by me. So I hit on this one. The fourth way that I think it's really crucial and tangible to be working a witness for Christ is avoiding gossip, right? It is so easy to gossip. It can be fun. It can be an addiction. It can be a coping mechanism. But when you gossip, you are definitely not working a witness for Christ. So how do you ever break that, right? You've been working with the same people or hanging out with the same people for, in most cases, for many years. I had to go through that transformation in my 20s. And I just learned this muscle memory to say the line, hey, this isn't a conversation I want to be a part of. When Andy says, did you hear what happened to blah, blah, blah? I say, Andy, it's not a conversation I want to be a part of. The first time he's like, ha, ha, ha. The second time he's like, oh, okay. The third time he says, did you? Never mind. But think about what we're told in the joy of the gospel. Think about what we're told, and that's the Pope Francis encyclical. Think about what we're told from the new evangelization. We are to create intrigue by the way that we live our lives. We are to be full of joy and to live the gospel so that others want to know, right? And that intrigue works. You are chipping away, and God works through you, and you may never get to see the fruits of what happened in that moment that I told Andy I didn't want to be a part of that conversation, but just let it happen and be comfortable in that moment. It is muscle memory. The very next day I might gossip with Andy because I'm used to it, but catch yourself, right? Think about what you did and get back on that horse. Okay, so when I think about working witness for Christ, I want to share with you a quote. It was on the side of a coffee cup. I don't even know who said it, and I actually am going to change it a little bit to fit what I want to say. That's why I'm not giving anybody credit. It's just out there. So it's about commitment, and it said, the irony of commitment, I want you to hear this, the irony of commitment is that it is deeply liberating. So in love, in work, in play, in faith, I just came up with that. The irony of commitment is that it's deeply liberating. It says the act frees you from the tyranny of your internal critic. It frees you from that fear that dresses itself up and parades itself around and calls itself rational hesitation. So to commit yourself is to remove your head as the barrier to your life. Think about this, right? So let's talk about work for a second. How many of us think the grass is greener somewhere else, or wish we had a different job, or really don't want to show up to work tomorrow, and you're just not fully committed? It happens. I promise there's some of you in this room. Some of you are smiling. What happens next? You do a mediocre job at work. What happens if you do a mediocre job at work? You don't really like it. You never excel. You never become passionate because you never become an expert. So you keep being mediocre and people start treating you mediocre, and then you keep thinking the grass is always greener, and you keep thinking you want to leave. Do you see how you never get out of this? It will never end. I'm telling you right now, Andy knows this, commit. Either be all in or leave. But you know what? The same could be said in faith. How many of us sit here and we try to intellectualize or come up with rational hesitation or try to pick apart what the church fathers and what the catechism teaches us, right? I did it. But let me tell you where I got to. I got to a complete commitment to what the church teaches, and it was the most liberating moment of my life. So I don't sit here and struggle with the Eucharist. The Eucharist is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. I don't struggle with the Marian doctrines. I don't struggle with the sanctity of life and my belief that all life is sacred. So by not having to have those intellectual conversations and struggles and grappling with all these things, I just freed up my life to where I get to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I get to have a devotion to our Blessed Mother. I get to experience those things with my wife. Again, early in my career, I probably would have sat here and said, well, I'm not sure about this part, or I'm not sure about this part. And guess what? It was like me being mediocre at work. I was mediocre in my faith. It is so liberating. In the same way that I mentioned at the beginning that my job is to be a husband and father, that commitment makes it where I no longer have to worry about anything else, because that's the love of my life, and those kids are my focus with my wife. I don't have to worry about all the other distractions in life.